Hi everybody, I'm Trudy, One Grounded Angel. This is my weekly angel card reading video for the week beginning Monday the 3rd of September through to the 9th of September 2018. So let's start shuffling. I think I will start with this card deck today, one of my favorites. Shouldn't really have favorites, but this one is called Daily Guidance from Your Angels, and it is very straightforward. Some of them are a little more complicated. This message is very much not straightforward. Go for it. So I always think of Stevie Nicks when I see the angel depicted on this card because that's what it reminds me of. But you know, the card is very much about not being afraid of what could go wrong. Although, you know, you're human, I feel like it's a little bit simplistic to say, don't worry, just go for it, because it's very normal to be afraid of what can go wrong. But for those of you who are facing a decision which involves an amount of risk, obviously it's not saying to be reckless. It's saying if you're being called to do something that is, you know, in your heart is right, but your brain is thinking about all the things that could go wrong and all the reasons it might fail. This is asking you to just take a risk and go for it. Not a huge risk, just a small risk. So think about ways you can mitigate that risk if you're really freaking out in terms of, say, if it's starting a business, you could look at doing what I did and going part-time in your other work while you allow space for the other business to grow, or starting doing it in your weekends or something like that. So if there isn't something you're considering at the moment that's really a big change, this could be low kind of level changes, such as if you're considering changing your diet and becoming plant-based, for example, or you're oh, I don't know, maybe you're thinking of joining a new group or something like that. This is encouraging you to really be aware of, if you have reservations about something, is that based on genuine reasons it might not work? Or is it based on your own fear and your own desire to hold on to the familiar in order to feel safe? Again, that's very human, but we want to make sure it doesn't hold us back so much that we end up living a life that's quite unsatisfying. You know, that quote, a ship in the harbour is safe, but that's not what ships are meant to do, is very true. Unfortunately, it's been used on a bank commercial here in Australia, so it's now a little bit tacky, but it still holds true. So be kind to yourself as you are going through that process of weighing up what's going on, and don't, you know, see yourself as weak if you find fear is coming up for you. It's very normal. And it's just about how you make your choices that shows up, whether that stops you or holds you back. Tuesday, the angel depicted here is called Bethany, and it's about self-care. So self-care is very much about pampering yourself, but it's also about little things you do, not about treats. So you don't have to go out and, you know, book a day in a spa or anything like that. Although if you have the means and the opportunity to do that, it sounds amazing. Go do it. But it's all about everyday choices as well. Drinking enough water is an act of self-care. Saying no to things you really don't want to do is an act of self-care. And you know, this card does really highlight treats, but whenever this message about self-care comes up, I feel like I need to emphasize that it's not just about those bigger things like, you know, buying yourself a magazine and drinking it by yourself, drinking a tea by yourself for half an hour while you read the magazine. You know, those things are wonderful, and they are your way of bringing some joy to your life. But self-care can also be about the steps you take to make sure you don't get into these really stressful situations in the first place. No one can avoid stress entirely, but there are some sources of stress and angst in our lives that are, if not generated by us, certainly our choices and our actions are a contributing factor, and that is, you know, getting immersed in other people's dramas and that sort of thing. So, and this card reminds you that self-care is not selfish, it's essential, because if you don't look after yourself, no one else can, and you can't look after anyone else either if you don't. So that's Tuesday the 4th of September. I'll shuffle now for Wednesday the 5th. Shouldn't be that hard to work out, but you know, sometimes you get a bit carried away and start looking at the whole week and getting too far ahead. Faith. Now, we had this card last Monday, not this Monday of this week, the one before, and I talked a lot about how this idea that if you just take a leap, you'll be caught by the universe, how sometimes that can lead you to to fall short when things simply aren't meant to be. So, I mean, if you want to go over that, definitely look up that video. But the message here, I mean, you can see the illustration is the same. It's someone taking a leap and grabbing for a swing. There is a risk you will fall, and I talked about this a bit with here. Go for it. So if you are, what I'm trying to say is, blind faith isn't always enough. You have to also use your brain and go, is this too much of a risk? And that's why I mentioned earlier about scaling that back a bit if you need to. The whole crux of these sort of messages about having faith and pushing the boat out, they're not about turning your life upside down. They're about just making sure that you're not living such a safe life that you're not really living at all. So, and the reason that people have these sort of fears come up is because they feel like they're not going to be supported, or they're not going to be held if they do make changes. And this message and last Monday's message are about reminding you that you are being looked after by the universe. You are being protected. So, you know, if things don't work out, it's not because the universe has abandoned you. It's because it probably wasn't right for you. So your job is to trust where you're being led. Trust where you're being led by the universe. And if things don't work out, know that there's something that had to happen for some. Sorry, I'm really struggling. That had to happen for some reason, and maybe it was because there was something that came out of that. Maybe you met a certain person who's going to help you later on, or maybe you learned something valuable about yourself, and that needed to happen as well. So failures are often not failures, even though we didn't hit the target we thought we would. The founders of Instagram created Instagram while they were trying to come up with something else. The original app didn't work, but the picture sharing kind of facility of it was a big hit, and that's what they sort of reformed and harnessed into Instagram, and now it's hugely successful and they made a lot of money. So don't get too obsessed with the target. Look at what can come out of something. Thursday, safe travel. This is very appropriate for me personally because at the time you watch this I will be travelling, and I've had some reservations because I'm someone who's not a great traveller by nature. I'm someone who likes the stability of home. So this card came up for me when I was considering this trip, and it certainly helped me to know that I was protected and safe. And that's what it's telling you. You're safe as you travel. And so if you are in that position of considering a trip or embarking on one right now, this is reminding you that you're being looked after. So for some of you, it will be saying that it's safe for you to, or maybe you actually just need a holiday. That could be what's coming up for you as well. It also talks about your passage through life, knowing that reassurance that you are safe as you move through things. I get a sense many of you are going through a lot of change, a lot of upheaval, and it can be difficult for you to feel safe in those circumstances because often those things aren't happening by your own design. They're thrust upon you. And it's difficult to understand that there is a sense of order and a sense of rightness within that chaos, and you're being asked to trust that things will fall into place the way they need to, and that things are happening for a reason. So, which is a difficult thing to say, I know, because sometimes when terrible things happen, we can't see the reason, and often we never will. But just to try and not resist it, but to try and go with whatever experience you're having, and to know that you're safe as you go through this change. Friday now. Become the true you. I used to get this card a lot when I was right at the start of my, I guess, spiritual journey, if you want to call it that. I know it sounds a bit pretentious. And I was always a bit mystified because I thought, but I am being me. I'm not someone who's fake. I'm not, someone with a lot of pretension. I couldn't understand it. And the writing on this card says, show the world who you really are and what you were born to do. And I just couldn't make sense of that. I didn't understand what I was here to do. So whenever this card comes up, I'm reminded of that. And I want to explain to people that this card isn't saying you're being fake. And it isn't saying that you're not being yourself, because I found that really insulting, the idea I was being fake. I was doing the best I could. I didn't feel like I was faking anything. But what it's saying is that you're not really in alignment with what you're here to do right now, and that's something that certainly was appropriate for me. I don't think I've really had this card since I've started, One Grounded Angel, and started going down this path. But that doesn't mean to say I'm not going to be on the wrong path at certain points, and will need to come back into alignment with what I'm actually here to do. It took a long time for me to figure out what I was born to do. And a lot of people, late in their life still don't know. So don't feel like you're failing if you still don't know what you're here to do. But do just look at the areas where you might be going along with what other people expect of you and that doesn't really feel right for you. Or you're doing something, you're going through the motions in some way. Perhaps you're pretending everything's okay and it's really not. Perhaps for me, I gave up drinking last year and I felt that I was just drinking even though my body really didn't want it, was making it very clear to me it didn't want it. I was still drinking because it was expected that that's what you do. You go out and you drink, and the idea of not doing that seemed so. I guess it provoked me because it felt like there was something wrong with me if I wasn't doing what other people were doing, and was another way that I was stepping out of the mainstream when I already have all these other reasons I'm not in the mainstream. So trying to feel safe with going my own way was a real big challenge as part of that. So look at the ways you might be out of alignment with what you're really here to do or what is right for you. Yeah, that idea of what you're really here to do is kind of a big idea. More look at what isn't right for you that you're doing, and you're doing because it might be expected of you, because everyone else is doing it, maybe because you just don't know what else to do, or perhaps you're in a job that's really not right for you. It's okay if your job isn't right for you, but make sure you're not using excuses to stay there, such as the money is really good and it would be hard for me to go elsewhere, or there aren't other jobs out there, or any other sort of story that you're telling yourself. There are no easy answers with that one, so just sit with it and be kind of flagging it. That idea will come up for you again if it's something that really speaks to you. So yeah, it's a big one. Oh, healing. We had this last Wednesday. No, sorry, it was 2 weeks ago. The days start to roll into one for me. Saturday, healing. I talked a lot about how this can relate to physical, mental, emotional, even spiritual healing. You're going to take from this whatever is right for you, as with all of these cards. But for healing, last time this came up 2 weeks ago, I did feel strongly it was more about emotional healing and encouraging you to do the work you need to do. If you are not coping, go and talk to someone about it. To not stick your head in the sand and pretend things are okay. And we do this in lots of areas of our lives. Financially, I'm guilty of that, certainly. Luckily, I am now a lot more on track with that, and being very clear-eyed about where I'm at and what I need to do has helped. Ignoring it, for some reason, things didn't get better. I had to actually take charge in order to sort that out. So yeah, financial healing can certainly be part of this. Emotionally, it's still a big one, I guess, big area for most of us, because there are going to be, when we've got emotional blocks, it's usually being prompted by some sort of area that we need to look at that we're ignoring. That doesn't mean to say emotions are not healthy. If they're what we would call unpleasant, if they're difficult, that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you necessarily, but sometimes it does prompt a process of looking at what's going on underneath the surface. And if you happen to be a Scorpio like me, you will not be able to resist the urge to look under the surface and figure out what's going on there, to really get at the heart of it so that you can actually fix it. You might not want to fix it, but you can't not look at it. So this card is really asking you to do what you need to do to heal. And maybe it's just a minor thing going on, you're just really stressed out and exhausted, you've been burning the candle at both ends, and maybe this is just asking you to take some time out so you can heal from that and be your best self. Sunday, oh, that's interesting. I've had one card pop out and one really jump out, so I'm going to read them both. The first is Clean It Up, the declutter card. So it could be physical clutter in your house that needs to get, a little bit of a sorting out. And we know this is true. If you have clutter in your physical space, it will really weigh on you emotionally, and it's so cathartic cleaning out clutter. I did this for my wardrobe recently. So good. But it can also refer to mental clutter, such as ideas you're holding on to about yourself. I'm not good enough. I'm a failure, etc., all that sort of thing. So that there's a declutter idea or some sort of clean up there. It might be about cleaning up your diet, etc. You've also got this card about Observer. It's interesting, I just talked about going under the surface. This card is sort of speaking to that process of introspection as well. If the story of what's really going on for you is not clear to you right now, that's okay. This is just asking you to be open to things that are going on that you can't quite see yet. So don't take things at face value is really the best way to sum up this message. And equally with people around you, be more of an observer and less of a participant in other people's stuff. Because when we get pulled into other people's drama, other people's situations, it's natural to want to help, but often the best thing you can do is to pull away because they need to sort things out on their own, and maybe the reason you're getting involved is so that you can avoid working on your own stuff. That's very, very common. All right, what have we got for the week? I think we've got messages about, I was going to say taking risks, but maybe I'd sum that up better by saying being bold and making sure that we are not letting fear make us live small lives. Not that we need to live big lives, but we want to make sure that we're not playing really, really small and never challenging ourselves, because then it's going to lead to regret, which I think is probably the most difficult emotion of all. One of, anyway. I think that links in with this card about become the true you, sort of links in with that. If there's something you know you need to do, write a book, or I don't know, visit a certain place, it's sort of encouraging you to go for it. Safe travel, that would also be relevant, wouldn't it? So that's the theme for the week. Thank you so much for watching. These will go on my social media as they do each and every week. My Instagram is at One Grounded Angel. My Facebook page is called One Grounded Angel. You can reach me on via my website www.onegroundedangel.com. It's all one word. And there's a bookings form you can hit there. I am not available for bookings at the moment because I'm overseas, but you can certainly book in for October and beyond if you wish to make contact. Thank you so much for watching and have a terrific week.